But when you're, as dominant as Don was back then, they're looking at everything you do. I mean, we had header stuff going on, the wing deal. It's, just a lot of stuff we could do back then. It made it really fun.
Green flag in the air.
Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of Hot Lappin' with Lanman. First of all, I want to start by thanking everybody for tuning in last week, for all the people that followed and liked and did the old share and subscribe and all that good stuff. Really important to me, and I hope we can continue to do that. If you continue to hit those buttons, sharing and subscribing, it can help me out going a long ways. So thanks again. This week, I'm really excited with the guest we're going to have in here. We are bringing in a world famous, probably top 3 crew chief in the sprint car world. This guy's done it all. He's won 10 Knoxville Nationals. He's won multiple World of Outlaw Points Championships. He's won the Kings Royal many times. He's won the Williams Grove National Open many times. You name a big sprint car race out there, and this guy has won it. Rick Warner, welcome to the show, to the second ever edition of Hot Lappin' with Lanman. Great to have you in the studio today. Great to have your family help you get hooked up with our connection today. Little issue on mainly my end, I had you guys chasing your tails there with the microphone deal, but appreciate the patience with that. And welcome, my friend. How's it going out there in Brownsburg, Indiana today?
It's good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, if it wouldn't be for the girls, I wouldn't have even got it turned on. So.
Absolutely. So you've been around this game for a really long time, Rick. The sprint car world. It's led you to some other avenues, but what I want to hear about a little bit is what got you into this racing world? And I'm talking about back when, I think you might have raced a 270 micro or not, but when you were a kid, your father, Dick, if he got you in there, what got you addicted to this world of sprint car racing?
Well, the racing happened in a different way for me. So we went to the races all the time. My dad had a sign business, and he used to let her race cars, and you just get to know a lot of people. And when I got to be probably 12 or 13, I could start going along with him and doing stuff like that. And you just get to meet people. And then, we went to the races pretty much every weekend. Back then it was Silver Springs, and we'd go to the Grove and, once in a while to Lincoln or something like that. But when I got older, I wanted to quit painting signs and go on the road. And Randy Wolf gave me my first chance to, work on a car full time. And I was really, really green. So it, probably worked on his patience a lot with me working with him. It was mostly just me and him and, his brother or two that would help him. But that's kind of how it started. I mean, before that, racing around home with Joey Kuhn and Barry Jackson and Larry Jackson, you just come up around it. And that's, Barry's probably one of the other guys that got me into it. He used to live down the road from me. They kept Larry's car at his shop, at where his mom and dad lived and stuff. And you just kind of get in it and get the bug, and then you can't shake it.
And that's for sure. So you were, did you ever race anything yourself? Did you ever try racing anything at all?
Yeah, I ran micros for probably 2 or 3 years. Got to be friends with Kevin Gobrecht and Brian, and did that. And then after that, then is when it got pretty serious about working on the sprint cars.
Okay. So give me an age bracket for yourself when you were doing that. How old were you when you raced, and then what got you, like, probably with Randy Wolf, like you talked about just a second ago, how old were you then?
Randy's stuff, I was probably, I want to say 18 or 19. I mean, I didn't race till I was in my 20s. So I don't know if I was old enough to go to the bar yet or not. So I know we drank
that's an
a lot.
important part. Yeah, that's an important part of it, definitely, too. So talking just a little bit, and I missed this, so here I am jumping around like last week, but I want to get this in there. You couldn't do this stuff without a supporting family, and you've got a great family behind you. I mentioned your dad, Dick, that probably got you going just a little bit there, but your wife, Danelle, who has stood by your side a lot of time away from the house, a lot of time going up and down that road, a lot of time at the shop, to make these things go around, to be as successful as you had. How important is it to you to have that support from her?
Very important. We've been, just over time as far as me being on the road, and then just stuff that's, happened in the last couple years, I'm really thankful, she's here, because she kind of takes care of me, guides me, it reminds me what I'm supposed to be doing or taking, or, just make sure everything runs smooth. And then when we're on the road, I mean, she does everything here, her and Stevie. And Drew's not here anymore. He's out in California, but yeah, she takes care of it all.
So, and I'm going to jump into Drew here after this, but you have Stevie too as the younger daughter, right? She's younger than Drew?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Stevie has grown up with her dad being on the road and a lot of that being away. Does it actually make the connection closer with the kids when you do get to come home, spend some time around the house, the off season if you'd have it?
Yeah, I think so. It just, when they're, with Drew, I got to be around more when he was younger, and then Stevie, when she was really little, I got to be with her a good bit. So when we started racing, there's some years in there, like, I miss a lot of stuff, that's going on at school, or you just miss things like that. And then, when you get older, you kind of regret it, because they only go through that once. So, but now that she's out of school and stuff, we, like to joke around and have a laugh, and we're pretty close.
Absolutely. And that's going to bring me over to Drew. I remember Drew coming around the racetrack when he was a little tyke, and even as he got a little bit bigger, and all of a sudden it just seemed like that interest to be like Dad, to get his hands on the wrenches and do some stuff. It just kind of came out of the blue, and he has really excelled in that.
Yeah, I mean, we used to take him everywhere when he was younger. He probably, when he was younger, he's probably been to more hotels than what most grown-ups have. So, just he's been around the people and, met the guys and stuff like that. And I'm really proud of what he's achieved.
So he's now out with the Tarleton team. I think he's going on year 3. I could be off a little bit, but as a dad, to see that team, they got a 360 win right out of the box with Tanner Holmes the other night, and they won a lot of races last year, with Carson Macedo behind the wheel and a couple other drivers. How does that make you feel? Because I would guess you're probably keeping up on that, where that race car is at every night too, and see what the results are.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm still here on the weekends and they're racing, like the Outlaw races were going off, usually we got 2 TVs going, we're watching the Outlaw race. And then later on, about halfway in through that, you got to turn on California because of the time difference. So it works out. I get to watch the Outlaw feature and then watch his feature afterwards. So it's all going on at the same time. So yeah, it's just been fun watching him come up through it. He has his own kind of mindset on what he does, and we talk a lot about stuff, but for the most part, he figures it out himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's it like when you guys are racing against each other? You're at the same track. You guys get out west there a little bit, or the Tarleton team comes out to the Nationals, things along that lines. Explain that to us.
Just trying to help any way I can on what he's doing, or he might not have time at different racetracks like I have, and it just as far as just minor setup stuff, or in general, or just to talk about what happens at certain racetracks and stuff like that, or just talk about the cars and stuff like that. Just try to help him any way I can.
Absolutely. So it's fun. So you kind of have another driver you're always, or team, keeping an eye on, just because you want to see your own child succeed.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So you talked about Randy Wolf a little bit. Talk about some of the drivers and kind of how you've worked with them, the bigger name drivers and any of the drivers, a lot of different guys out there you've worked with in the past, and who's been the funnest to work with.
I mean, it all kinds of runs together. It's when I was younger, naturally my first deal that I got paid for, and you're making a living doing it, would have been Tyler Walker, and then after that, I had a chance to race with Jock Howden-Shield, Andy Hillenberg, and two totally different styles, but you're learning as you're going. The whole thing about picking up confidence on what you're doing, and back then I was just young, that, you think you know everything, but you don't know shit. And it takes years, and it just takes years of doing it to get it right, to have enough confidence and not, make mistakes with stuff, and learn how to, like Joey Saldana versus Donny Schatz. They're two totally different styles the way they drive. And now I'm with Rico, and he's different than anybody I've been with. So, Joey, I had fun with, and Andy. I mean, any of the guys I learned from, and some of the drivers, you learn a little bit off of each one of them as far as what they like in the car and how you got to get it. So you learn different styles and how to do it. The guys that like tight cars, there's a different way to do that than the guys that really like to roll and don't like to be, tight. So it teaches you two different ways to do it. It just depends who you're with and who's driving it.
So you said your first ever paid gig was with Tyler Walker. And if my memory serves me right, was that the Wallace and Coetta Ledford 35W car, or 35 car, silver and black?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what year was that? Do you remember that?
Sure. Well, I know that we were racing with Karl and them back then. It had to be 95, 94 to 96, somewhere in around there.
Yeah. So you guys came out of the block, and how many years did you spend with Tyler and that team?
Probably 2? three or four. Three.
Okay. Well, you guys
I raced with him out in California before we went, on a touring schedule. I did a year in California with him, kind of moved out there and got rolling. And then, then the next 2 years, I think, we raced on the road then.
And did you guys run the Gum Out Series one year? Does that ring a bell?
We did the All-Star deal for a while, and then the Gum Out deal, and then Outlaw races whenever you could hit them,
Yeah. So, in my opinion, I remember that car very well, and it kind of came out of the blue for a lot of the diehard sprint car fans. But all of a sudden, Tyler Walker and the 30 black and silver's 35 car are very fast. And I remember I was working for a guy named Mike Martin over at SCN Radio when I started doing pit reporting. And a lot of us were talking about Alan Holland back then, Hosehead. The 35 car was probably the fastest car in the country at the time. And what's your thoughts on that? Because you guys were definitely a contender every night you hit the racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for as old as he was. I mean, he was only 18 back then, 18 or 19.
Tyler?
Yeah. And,
okay.
His dad let him go on the road, and we, I think the one year, in Outlaw races, we ran second to Mark like 22 times. In 96, that's like winning, because Karl was winning all the races, and we still won eight races. And he's, put himself on the front row of the Knoxville Nationals twice. But at that age, I think, if he could have been racing today, I who knows what would have happened with him or how good he could have been. But back then, it definitely was an eye-opener to be racing with him.
And you were probably one of the guys that has stayed in touch more than anybody. It's hard to do with Tyler. But Tyler, any idea what he's up to these days?
I haven't seen him for a while. We've seen him at Drew's wedding, and Danelle talks to him once in a while, or they text and stuff. But I haven't seen him for a long time. Not since Drew's wedding.
Yeah, well, good info there. So you, after that, I want to jump back and say that, you said that car was on the front row of the Knoxville Nationals 2 years in a row. Well, this is your first paid gig also. How's Ricky Warner feeling at those races?
I just pretty much, you get into them deals and you bite off more than you can chew, and you got to back it up. So there's a lot of stuff you got to learn in a hurry. The older guys back then, like Karl and Daryl Socher, Scott Gherkin, just a lot of them guys teach you your craft along the way. You just got to be able to pay attention and ask the right questions, because, a lot of times they won't just give it up. But, if you show somebody that you have a desire to do it, I mean, them guys knew that that's what I wanted to do. So, they helped me out tremendously when I was younger.
Yeah, and that's one thing I was going to work in here. Karl Kinser was a major influence in your life, and I think probably one of your better friends over that time when Karl was still out racing, and even when Karl stepped away from the racetrack. And how influential for you was Karl Kinser?
But I mean, when you're that young, I mean, it doesn't get any better than him. He was like God back in '96. So whatever he said, you just did it because that was the gospel back then. And everybody
Yeah,
was trying to be as fast as them guys were. So it definitely, I was on a different learning curve in that camp. So as far as him helping me with fuel, you just understand how to race, how to fuel motors, the just the basic stuff about doing it and how you go about, getting to your feature setup and stuff like that. I'd soak everything up like a sponge when he would, when I'd get time with him to talk and stuff. Me and Rico just went down there. We took our team went down and seen him like 2 weeks ago. He doesn't look any different, and he gets around just as good as he ever did. So we went down and visited with him, and Mark took him for lunch and got to hang out. And he tells Rico stories, and he's just a really good guy to know.
and he's
I'm
probably
glad
still,
I'm glad he was in my life.
yeah, and he's probably still just as witty as he ever was too.
Oh yeah, he can crack a joke and make you laugh for a couple of minutes.
That's for sure. You said Mark was along there too, and a lot of people remember Mark Kinser, and he obviously drove for his dad there at the end, and like you said, they were pretty untouchable. What's Mark doing these days?
I'm not really sure. I mean, he pops in. I know he has a land management thing he does for somebody or something like that, and he's got his kids and whatever they're doing. But they just tinker there in the shop and do what they do in Olytic.
Yeah. So I know you. Then there came a time where I think you worked for Donny for a while, and Joey and Donny. But what I really want to key on here is some people might not know you went down to NASCAR land there for a couple years, and what was that like?
Culture shock is fine. You're in a shop with 300 people, so it's not. You're used to the sprint car thing of just three guys. 3 or 4 guys, and you go down there, you're just a number in the system. So and it's hard to, um, it's hard to come up through that. That's definitely a political deal, and but I learned a lot, and met some really good people, really smart people, and got to work there at Everham's and just to kind of see all the aspects of aero stuff and working on the cars, just a different way of thinking when you're, because when you're used to just looking at a sprint car every day, there's a lot more moving parts what they got on the cup car and how they look at everything. So it was a good experience for me. And I think it teaches you how to be really detailed about stuff.
Absolutely. So you said you were with Everham. I assume was Casey driving the car then, I would assume?
Yeah, I didn't really get to work with Casey. We were on the Busch team. Todd Devenich was there with us.
Okay.
Just we worked on the Busch car back then, and then we did a little bit of stuff with R&D. And then Keith Coldsback, Kenny. If anybody knows who Kenny Coldsback is from Kenny's Components, I mean, his brother Keith works down south, so he used to be a non-wing racer and stuff. So I got to be friends with a guy, at work. So it kind of, we talk about sprint car racing at work all the time, and there's different
Yeah.
guys there that are kind of from it, or just from all other aspects of racing. So it was a cool place and a cool time. It was really a cool time to do it back then. I don't know how it would be now. I think it's a lot different.
So the other thing that might tie into this, I'm not sure, Ray Everham turned into kind of a dirt fan. He married Aaron Crocker eventually, and all that tied together. Do you think you had anything to do with you maybe opening up his eyes and seeing, hey, this dirt world's kind of cool?
No, I didn't have anything to do with that. I think he back then, before that, when I was racing with Tyler, we used to stay there. and work. We'd run Charlotte. We'd stay at Everham's shop and
Oh,
work.
okay.
And they I think Tyler did some tests and stuff for him before or something like that with something they were involved in. I forget how that all went down, but it wasn't until after that I went to work there. But yeah, I think he's a big fan of sprint car racing. I've seen him at the Nationals a couple times and get to talk to him. I just think he enjoys, good racing.
Absolutely. So you worked for a guy named Donny Schatz, and I just had Don on last week, and you guys had some great success there. You get going, let's jump back here to 16, 17, 18, 19. You guys were winning 22, 25, 31 races a year, and you guys had a great team together then. How important do you think it is, even like today, keeping the crew members together, keeping that team intact, and building and learning as you go? Because like this is probably year 3 or 4 with you and Rico now, and you're probably getting to that stage where you could really start winging some wins in the win column.
Yeah, when we first went there, it's just a building process. And like the second or third year I think the second year we got rolling. And then, we always had good guys that worked for us and stuff. So everybody took it really serious. And then, you're lucky enough to win your first championship, and then it gets, shit's on then. So
Yeah.
you got to buckle down and really get serious about it, because the hardest thing to do after you win the first one is back it up. And to win 10 of them, it's kind of surreal when you look back at the run we had together. It's probably, some of the best years that I'll have ever racing. So that's a lot of it goes to him, his family, when we raced out of their family shop and then eventually racing for Tony. But it just, it's very gratifying to look back and see what we accomplished as a team.
Yeah. And then to string some championships along with the World of Outlaws too. You guys never stopped.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's the only thing that we've done that Karl hasn't done is, we went 6 years of winning 20 races or more. So that's kind of unheard of anymore. So it's, you look back and you're like, how'd we do that? In the moment you don't think that way, but when you get to look back at it, or you're, at the Hall of Fame and they're running your career by you, you're like, man, it really makes you feel good.
Okay. So we know you've won multiple Knoxville Nationals. You've won multiple Kings Royals. You've won the Williams Grove National Open. You've won pretty much everywhere from the East Coast to the West Coast. A question for you, if you could, if you were to pick out one race that was the most gratifying for you to win, head to victory lane with, what race would that be? And let's just say up till now, because there's more to come for you.
Yeah, I think, you got to say, and everybody that wins it for their first time, it has to be Knoxville, because it's like 1,000 pounds is off your shoulder when you're standing on the stage. So it's, and you get the first one under your belt, and then, it's, you can't wait to get back and do it again. But that one's the one that stands out to me the most, because it's the hardest one to win.
Yeah. So then let's take probably Eldora and Williams Grove, because you are, I believe, a native of Carlisle, Pennsylvania. But you go out there and you win that National Grove Open a couple different times too. Is it satisfying to go back home and say, right in front of your hometown crowd, your family, and win those races?
Yeah, anytime we got to win in Pennsylvania was special to me. And I think Don and the team knew when we were in Pennsylvania, it just, you try to go to a different level, because in there you can get your ass kicked real quick, and it's just rewarding to go back home and do good and run well.
Yeah, it definitely is. So you mentioned the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and you are now an inductee. You're still active out there racing too, but talk about the day you got the call that you were going in.
I was actually sitting in the hospital getting an infusion for my cancer stuff, and Bob called me, and I wasn't sure what number it is, so I didn't answer. When we got in the car, I asked Danelle, I said, "What's this number?" She goes, "It's Knoxville." So I called him back, and he told me I was going to be inducted, in the summer. And yeah, it just kind of a lot of stuff flushes over you when you're thinking about it, and that you can get to that level that you get recognized for your work.
Yeah. And a lot of cool people came to that event that day, too. They always have it on a race night, so that's kind of cool, except for you guys that are still out there trying to race. And were you able to stay for the races that night, or did you have to get on down the road and get over to where Rico would happen to be?
No, we took the whole weekend off. The boys, Zach Middlebrooks and Brady Forbrook, they ran with Rico that weekend. I think they ran a second and fifth or something like that. And they did good. And we, Damien Gardner was there with me. Don got to come with Scuba. A lot of the guys that were, that were part of the team for a long time, which meant meant a lot to me that he could be there and make it. Because they were racing that night. They had to, as soon as it was over, they got on the plane and flew back to Cedar Lake. I think's where they were. But yeah, it's a weekend I'll remember for forever. And, Alan Kreitzer was there getting promoted from Pennsylvania for something. But, he's probably known me since I've been very young, painting signs back home, and to get inducted in the Hall of Fame. He's pretty much watched my whole career. So Deuce Terrell was there. I started racing with him a long time ago at Wittermeyer's with Kenny Jacobs. So it just felt good to have older guys there that got to see you come up through it.
Yeah, and still be there to celebrate with you. That's good stuff, Rick. So you just mentioned that you were sitting in the hospital when you got the phone call, and a few people may not know this, but you've had some challenges over the last probably 7 years. I think you told me 2018, where you were diagnosed with cancer, and some things you like to keep private, and sometimes you don't. So, how did that ever get discovered, and initial reactions, and how did you guys move forward from that?
It was the start of 18. Like I was watching, Tony was racing 360s with Jimmy Carr the week before we had to go to Volusia, so I was watching that, and I just started having back pain in my lower back on my right side, and then it turned into like somebody had a vice grip on me, and kept tightening it up, and I couldn't really stand up straight. So I told Danelle, I'm like, we have to go to the doctor or go to the hospital. So we went that night, and I spent 4 hours in the hospital. I didn't know if I had kidney stones or what was going on, but something had me bent over and I could hardly breathe. And the doctor finally come in and told us that I had renal cell carcinoma, which is kidney cancer. So, and that kind of, when somebody tells you that, you start thinking of all the stuff you're not going to be able to do. So it kind of scares you. But the doctor, told me he couldn't work on me for 4 weeks. And we went down to Volusia. I think we won 3 nights down there. And then I went to Tony's house in Charlotte, which he got me into, the Levine Cancer Institute down there, and some people that he's affiliated with that I don't know who they are, but helped me get in there and got the top doctor to look at me and stuff like that, and a kidney specialist. And they did my operation, took my right kidney out, and I stayed at his house probably, I don't know, a week and a half. Whenever they said I was okay to fly home, and went back, and I think we only missed another week of racing, and I went back out on the road. So
so obviously the racing season continued. They're not going to stop it because someone's down and out. So you're sitting in the hospital bed, and you're sitting at Tony's recovering. Are you chomping at the bit to already get back out there, or are you hurting, or how's that recovery period?
Yeah, that, and the guys, I think Scuba was doing it. I think Brad Mariscotti was there then, just going over stuff at the racetrack, or they'll call from the racetrack, or you're watching it, and they might call before the feature and just talk a little bit, just like that. But yeah, to see your car running around, you can't be there. It's tough.
Yeah, I can't imagine, but that would be tough. So then you've gone through some recovery on that, and things are are looking good on the cancer. Were there ever any chances, or did it ever come back at all where you had to worry about the cancer side of it, or are you
No,
pretty good to go in that department?
well, it's they took my kidney out, but what happened is it metastasized and went to my lungs. So I have spots in my one lung, and I did, I've done infusions for probably 4 years, and then yeah, and I just switched my medicine last week. I'm on a different stuff now, but I don't do infusions right now. I just take a pill.
Okay. So you got the cancer thing, and you've hurdled that, and you think you're cruising along, and things are kind of somewhat normal back in life. And then this last January, you have something else that kind of just catches right up alongside the head. And what happened there?
Yeah, so we go into Christmas. I went home to with Danelle to her parents. They're in what they live in Wichita, Kansas. So I come upstairs to let the dogs out, and I got like pains in my chest, and I didn't know if I had heartburn or what what it was. But we got home, and I have stairs here at 2-story house. So I went downstairs, came back up, let the dogs out, and went to get ready, and had that same feeling again. But I sat down and I couldn't get it to go away. So I Danelle got me to the doctor, and they took me to the cath lab, and about 4 hours later, they put 2 stents in me and stayed overnight, and then came home. But I think my Widowmaker was like 99% blocked, and my other one was 80.
Yeah,
it's all that good living on the road.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges is, but just even eating healthy out there. But so a big scare there, and there's a little bit of funny side to the story, just because you've had to share with me about saying you need to go to the hospital and Danelle and getting you over there and all that, and then she's a good woman.
Yeah.
So
right. the kidney night, I said we got to go to the hospital, and she said, "Quit being a puss. We'll just go in the morning." That's what it was. I'm like, we got to go now.
Okay, so that's what it was. So okay, I must have had him confused, but anyway. So anyway, good to know. Right now, the health outlook for Ricky Warner about as good as it can be again.
Yeah, I mean, I did my heart rehab. Still, I told him when I was leaving, and I got a green light to go, and we'll see how it goes. So we're going to start at Vegas here next week, and or this weekend, and we'll see how I do.
Absolutely. So I was talking to another guy that was going to try to jump in here with me, but he couldn't make it today. So innovations in sprint car racing, everybody looks at the cars for the last 20 years. And a lot of people say a lot of things haven't changed, maybe the way the wings mount a little bit and just some other stuff. But there's been some huge innovations in sprint car racing, and you've been behind probably 80% of them. So is there anything that jumps out to you that you can think of that changed the sprint car world the most, to kind of got people's eyes opened up and got you going a little bit?
Back then he studied what Karl did. He did everything really light. He worked on his own wings. His level of detail to everything was crazy. But the wings today are different. They kind of got everybody in the boxes, and I think that's why you don't see stuff changing like you did, 15 or 20 years ago. Stuff was changing every year. Somebody had a different style car, or different hoods and different wings, or just thought about a different way to do it, or but now there's, you're kind of put in a box and what you can do. And, the shock stuff has probably came a long way since probably 10 or 15 years ago. So you got to be on your game on a lot of that stuff. There's always something new coming along as far as bump rubbers, or, now we're, bar dynos, and you got tire dynos, and, you got all this information that you can get, but it still comes down to, being a master at the basics for what you got to do at the races. You still got to run stagger. Your motor's got to run, but it just, I think nowadays it's just way more detailed. Every little detail is something. So it's just makes it a lot more time consuming and tedious as far as maintenance goes and stuff like that. Everybody's got the same stuff. In 96, Karl probably had, 95 and 96, he had rear ends you couldn't even get, there was
Yeah.
time, guys could have an advantage and run it out a year before, it went to the masses. But now, a guy with a credit card and a crescent wrench can build one of these and get the same thing you got. So, they can get the latest heads, they can get the latest injection, they can get the lightest rear, they can get, whatever you want to run for drive shaft, what you want to run for bearings, just whatever. If you got the money and, and somebody's willing to spend it, it's limitless what you can do. But as far as putting your time in and understanding the wings and what different stuff does what on the racetrack, it still is very important.
Yeah. And the guy that was going to jump in here was going to be Don, but he said you got to one thing that Rick really brought, I think, to the table was, I think in I don't know what year it was that you came to the family shop up there with Don. Probably around was it 96, that far back, or would it be closer to 2004?
Well, 2002 I was down south, so it had to be 3 or 4.
Okay, so it might have been then. He said that Linton Jeffrey had given him a wing to try. And Linton was just a young kid trying to get going. And Don's like, well, we've got our other deal going. It was just kind of sitting in the corner. And you came back that winter and you took a look at that wing and you got it all ready, Don said, and said, let's go race with this thing. And that was pretty much the beginning of Wing Wars, as it was called, because that thing, and he said, you and Linton actually got to know each other very well then, and it pretty much changed the whole dynamic of the wing deal. Tell us just a little bit about how that went out and what you guys learned, what you can share right now and you can't share, but obviously there was some advantages in that top wing.
Yeah, I mean, that particular wing, and you're not allowed to run anymore, so it doesn't matter talking about it. It was built out of square, in a different way the boards were done. I think back then we were running, it wasn't a wicker bill, it was, the 6-inch dish deal in the back. And just the way the boards were placed on it, I think, TP and Vortex back then were the two biggest ones. You had other guys, some guys out of Pennsylvania, other deals floating around that were building stuff, but I think the first night we put it on, the way it makes a car get into racetrack and stuff, Don goes, we just need to run this thing all the time, because I don't feel like that with the other wing on. So you just get looking at stuff of what's different, and I mean, that whole year, everybody got that deal and we were turning them and opening them up and the boards were up in the back and staggered and, the right board was all the way back and just doing all the stuff that was in, the right board out. I mean, back then the rule, they used to walk up with a broomstick and put it on your right rear and your right sideboard couldn't be out any further than that. So now it has to be 90 to the belly. So anybody that kind of can figure out where the board sits and where you can go out to, that, I mean, it's probably a good 5-8 inches you could turn the bottom of the right sideboard out. And not knowing that until later when we used to got a chance to take it to the tunnel, it was like 200 pounds of right rear weight. Now that's unheard of. Most of the time when you turn the wing, it's trying to pull you off the right rear. So it was a fun time to try different stuff. And, and the better you get, the more confidence you have of trying stuff. So we tried a lot of stuff, And
then when you say we, it was your team, but that's kind of what got Linton his name to fame. Was the Vortex wings were the way to go there. And I remember the TP, but boy, Linton stuff sure took off there for a while too.
Yeah, he does his homework. He knows what's going on with that stuff. And, it's just, and then you try to keep it in your camp of guys, and how that works. Guys will get a wing from him and then they got their guy to copy it. Or just, and stuff got out that way. But, we were, it definitely raised the bar on our car when we switched to them. So it just put your car in the racetrack a certain way. And it ended up, for us having a lot of wins using that wing.
So another thing with the top wing was, I was told by Don, was the fact that back then you guys, when you would go to the infield, for the work area at the end of the night, a lot of you guys would take your top wings in before the races even started. You just had another one sitting there. And one night, somebody from your team, or maybe you, looked down and you got 2 or 3 of these other crew chiefs over there literally measuring up your wings. It's a compliment now, but what's the initial reaction when you see that going on?
Oh, you want to beat their ass. I think we were PRI one year and I caught, Dan Lasowski in there measuring when we walked out and I forgot something we put in the seat and I went back to get it and they're standing on the right rear measuring the wing, and back then, Canes were doing stuff with theirs, just different guys. They're just trying to get an edge. So everybody had a little bit different stuff. But when you were, as dominant as Don was back then, they're looking at everything you do. I mean, we had header stuff going on, the wing deal. It's, just a lot of stuff we could do back then. It made it really fun.
Yeah. And we'll just cap it off with this is what Don told me was the wing rules that are in place today with the World of Outlaws and the high limit and everybody else out there are in place because of a guy named Ricky Warner. So take that for a compliment.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So another Aero story, because Aero, one thing you said it earlier in the show about going down to NASCAR and you learned how to learn about Aero and stuff was you were at a test sometime back here, probably 10, 12 years ago, you guys and Mark Richards with whoever happened to be driving the Rocket 1 car at the time. And Mark took the roof off and the sail panels off while they were at the test and they went almost 3/4 of a second faster. And he was beside himself. He couldn't figure out how that could be without that roof on top and stuff like that. And you were standing right beside him. Do you remember what you said to him?
Yeah, that started. We were actually at Hooligans when you're down at Volusia. It's right around Super Bowl time, and they were hanging out with us or something. We all ate together, his team and our team, and they get talking about it. And I had Wind Tunnel Pro on my phone. It's an app you can get to draw stuff and just watch different stuff on it. So, and he was talking to me about the late model stuff. I said, well, if you take the sail panels off that, you can get more air to the rear spoiler. And he's like, what? And we were drawing stuff and looking at it and he's like, holy shit. So they tried it somewhere. I guess they had to put stiffer springs in it or whatever they did when the night they did it. But that, they set rules on their deal too. So,
but did that also bring the open sail panel to the late model racing? Isn't that kind of where that came from? Was you and Mark?
Cut the windows out. Before that, I think they were almost solid. So now it's just, a little trim that just outlines where it used to be. So and they probably do a lot more, but I know that was a big deal for him,
Getting those sail panels opened up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was told that was a Ricky Warner deal too. So not only are you not dabbling, but pretty much specialized in sprint cars, you got your eye to the late models too.
Well, back then, when I was drinking, I could do some good work, Sure.
Is that when the best stuff comes out?
You think about stuff, it just comes to you. I guess it was weird back then, but it's a fun time with friends and they're do a whole different discipline than what we do. So our cars lay left when they go in the corner, their cars lay to the right. So that, everything's totally different on what they do. But, to help be part of something like that and bring something up to see if it helps somebody, it makes you feel good. He laughs about it every time I see him or somebody asks him about something and he said, well, that came from a sprint car guy.
Yeah. So do you stay in touch with Mark or any of the late model guys out there too?
Little bit here and there, if we're racing in there somewhere, just when their schedule meets up. I mean, once in a while, the late models go to some unique tracks that we don't always see, but then something will get scheduled there, and we kind of have a deal. He runs a certain gear at Lernerville and we run a certain gear at Lernerville, and it's like my no-go gauge. So I can call him and he says, oh yeah, okay, we ran this. So I forget what, I'd have to look in my book what it is, but we're like 20 points different than a late model. But as long as you do the math, I usually can get pretty close if it's a place we've never been and them guys have been there, And
that's kind of unique that the two bodies can cross over and literally help each other out too. And that's going back to probably just having that 0 point where you guys kind of know which direction to go from. That's cool. I never thought of that stuff. Yeah. So, I want to talk to you, just get your opinion on something here. And it's just kind of some stuff that came up over the last couple of weeks. And, you know, everybody's got an opinion, so there's no right or wrong answer here. But they had a situation down at Volusia, and I'm just using this one because it's the most recent, where they've got a certain lap limit that they're going to allow you guys to roll around there before you can refuel the cars. And then you hear a lot of people complaining about open reds because that's not sprint car racing. So, you know, they had a deal where one of the guys ran out of fuel running second or third, but the leader made it and a couple others dropped out. What's your thoughts on this? Do we need to do something with the fuel tanks to make them bigger? I don't like that idea. I don't like a bigger bomb riding around on their butt. Do we get the motors so they're not drinking as much fuel? You know, is it just the nature of the beast that you're going to have to deal with? What are your thoughts on stuff like that?
You know, I think, like, you know, summertime, you really don't have the problem. But when you're at Volusia, you know, and the air's 500 below sea level, and you got a 900 to 940 motor, whatever they make on whoever's dyno, you know, they're going to want fuel. And it's constant flow. It's not EFI. It doesn't squirt it into timed injection. You know, they're not built for fuel mileage. You know, this ain't what they think it is. And they, you know, the guys that make the rules, I don't know if they understand the motors and the you know, the fuel injection that we run on them. It's, you know, if you were timed injection, you'd probably use half the fuel, and it's just, when it's good air, you can't run enough. There's times when you could run too much, but when you're in Florida at Volusia, I mean, all you can give it, it'll take it. And I don't think they make a tank big enough for that. And if you did, you wouldn't want it on the back of your race car. I mean, if you turn a dart and throw it backwards, it's going to turn around and run the point in the wall. So that's what people don't understand about a sprint car. You don't want to have all that swinging weight behind you like that. I mean, once you get, I mean, that, you know, if you picture a Silver Crown car, there's a reason they don't drive them crazy. Once you get that pendulum swinging, you'll never stop it. Just, you know, the heads and stuff, they flow a lot of air. You know, the valve jobs that are on them now and the way the injections are, I mean, you're making so much horsepower now. It just, they'd have to put a serious rule in effect, you know, to cut the horsepower down. You're not just going to make a whole size and do it. It's a whole evolution of where it's got to now, and why they use that much fuel. But when you're racing and guys are lifting and running the throttle, you're not really using that much. Generally, your slicker racetracks, you won't use as much fuel as, you know, if it rains or, you know, the guys get a little carried away with the water truck and, you know, you just run 30 laps, hammer down. There ain't nothing you can do about that. And then you throw wrecks in there or yellows and you're waiting for guys to get off the racetrack. It's part of the, you know, it's the nature of the beast. There's guys who run out with a 33-gallon tank now. So it's, you know, I don't think that's the answer. I don't really get involved in it because it's, you know, the more you bitch, the more they go the other way. So it's you know, I just think it's a lot of has to do with where the racetracks are at the end of the night and stuff like that is what dictates how much fuel you're going to use and what the air is. I mean, when summertime, when it's 3,000 feet, 3,500, 4,000 feet is nothing like running Volusia at 1,000 under sea level. So it's, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The part that's hard to match up is you look at Volusia, which is the fastest half mile out there, and you can't get 25 lap. You're running a 25 lap feature for the sprint cars. And the fan in me is like, only 25 laps? Well, we found out that's all they can get down there. They can't do 30. But you go to Eldora, back when the Kings Royal used to be 40 laps on a big, fast half mile. And you guys your big tanks now go from what, 28 to, what's the big one?
28 to 33.
So most guys are probably running the 33-gallon tanks, right? But they're getting 5 more gallons and they're going an extra 15 laps. The math doesn't work there until you factor in the air. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's just on a given night or given racetrack, there's just different racetracks you use more fuel. And like I said, it's constant flow. The fuel never quits running in the nozzle. As soon as you start the motor, it never stops. So, it's constantly running. And when your foot's down, it's at max pressure or what it can run and run as much in there as you can. So it's, they're not built for fuel economy. So it's, you run twice as much fuel as you run on gas. So it's, it's just nature of the beast.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about down there, and this isn't probably I don't know if it's a question for a crew chief or not, if it's more of a question for a driver, and I'm just looking for opinions here. I'm not looking to advocate for making a big rule change or anything, but something that's come up a lot in the last couple of years is this safety aspect of stopping and causing a yellow for loose seatbelts. How are these professional race car drivers, and I'm not picking on anybody when I say it, I'm really not, but how are these guys getting it so their belts are coming loose while they're out there?
I don't, there's different locks and stuff you can run. I mean, there's the old latch deal, and then the Schroth stuff's different. I think that's a knob that locks them all in. So I don't know how you, or what catches it that, unlatches you while you're racing.
You obviously put the seatbelts in for the driver, but at the end of the day, you're not the one buckling them up. You're not getting in the car and saying, "Are you all good now?" Well, I'm just wondering, is there a fail-safe way for these seatbelts moving forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, somebody'd have to look into the latching mechanism, because usually it's just a ball detent when you lock it in. The Schroth deal's different. That's a knob, but I'm not sure how they all lock in. But it's stuff is a lot safer than it was 15, 20 years ago, as far as all that stuff goes. So they've been working on it. It's just I don't know what the answer is to keep your belts from coming unhooked. Just something needs to stay away from your latch, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that there's a million different answers out there for everybody, but it's just, it's been brought to light because, it was just maybe more unique the way this situation happened. And I'm not bagging on Jacob Allen one bit. Jacob, I like Jacob. He's a good guy, and I've got to know him real well over the last couple of years. So not picking on him. It's just, this happens to be the situation where it kind of brought attention to everybody. So it was a different deal.
Yeah, I just think it's something they have to look at. So
yeah, exactly. So you said you're getting ready to head out to Las Vegas for the high limit season opener with Rico Abreu. And how excited are you to get started? Do you guys think you're ready to go? Are you in a good position? Well, what are your thoughts for the 2025 season?
Yeah, you just try to, look at what the rule deal is for this year. You get to run an 1.5-inch wicker bill, and that's more like, in your notebooks like it was 2 years ago. So hopefully the tires haven't changed that much where there's something else you got to counter every year. They say that they're not changing anything, but you always have to run something a little different for the other year than what you ran last year. But yeah, we're ready to go, and everybody's in a positive mood and looking forward to getting out there and doing it.
So you have your crew members, Zach and Brady Forbrook, who is Guy Forbrook's son, I believe. And I know he's been with you guys, I don't know how long, but at least 2 years, I think. I think Zach's, I don't know how long Zach's been there either, but tell us just a little bit about your guys, how everybody gets along, getting to know their roles, how excited everybody is to get racing and day-to-day stuff at the shop.
Yeah, Zach's from California, so he's been with Rico. He's been with Rico longer than I have. So he started there. I want to say he's been with him 5 years, maybe more than that. But he's a big guy, and he's the car chief, and he takes care, looks after the rig, does a lot of the driving, does a lot of the maintenance on the car as far as rear end stuff and just maintenance is the, front end stuff and the day-to-day stuff you do. Brady, he helps in all that. And then he's, is in charge of the tires and stuff like that and getting the wheels mounted and keeping the wheels organized and stuff like that. And he's a really hard worker. So they both work really hard and they both want to do it really bad. And they want to have good results.
Yeah. So you're working with Rico Abreu too, and Rico had some tough luck over the winter when he went over to Australia. We don't need to dwell on it, but how's Rico doing? Physically, he's all ready to go 100%?
Yeah, he's doing good. And if anybody knows him, he probably worked out harder this winter after that happened. And he probably was a little extra than what he normally does, just trying to make sure that he got healed right. And, he's cleared and all ready to go and says he feels good. When he started the car at the shop, he said nothing bothered him when he turned the steering wheel or anything like that. So, yeah, I'm just glad he's back and in shape and ready to do it.
Yeah. So with Rico, I think last year was the first time he ever, well, in the sprint car world, I know he's done a lot of stuff with Keith in the past, Keith Kuntz, but points racing in a series is different than being a true outlaw. And was there some learning curves there, do you think, last year? Did Rico understand it and just, it's tough when you're points racing?
Yeah, I think he learned that, and you have to kind of let a guy organically learn that because it's, because it's what's going on over the course of the year, not given nights. You can't just run around with your hair on fire and putting yourself in bad positions and sticking it in holes where, there's a 50-50 chance you could wreck. So, when it's time to, when you feel right and it's time to go for the lead, that's fine. But if you're still, a fourth place car and you're pushing it and you're not going to be there. There's no sense doing that. So there's a little bit of give and take, but you still got to run hard and do what you need to do to try to win the race. Over the whole course of the year, watching him kind of figure it out, he went into Texas second in points and we ended up third by 1 point. So, I mean, to go your first year on a traveling series with the guys that we raced with, it's very fast paced on that deal. So, I was proud of him for what we accomplished because he's never had to do that. He's been a pick and choose car. And if he don't want to run here, he ain't going. And if you don't want to go here, he's not going there. But when you're on a traveling series, you got to go to the places that you don't like to go to just as well as go to the places that you like to go to. So, that creates a whole different challenge in it. And you have to get better at the bad places to put your whole season together. So he understands that, and he sets goals, for us and the team and for him personally. And, that's all you can do is set the goals and try to achieve them.
Yep. So I have a deal where I put out there on the on my Facebook page, and I have some fans email us some questions that they'd like to ask Ricky Warner. So I'm going to bounce a couple, 2, 3 of those off you, and then I'll let you get back to the family, and I know you're getting ready to go out west. So Jamie wants to know, how many calls to Karl Kinser, if you were to guess, have you made in your lifetime?
Jamie who?
Jamie A. Jamie Adrian, you know that.
When I was younger, probably the years with not really calls, but maybe where we're at the shop, a lot with Tyler. I talked to him a lot back then. I was lucky enough for him to kind of take me under his wing, and I wanted to learn it all and in a hurry. So he was a big part of getting me to the next level as far as getting confidence and, doing stuff the right way. On the road, there's different cliques. Back then, there's kind of the guys Karl had in his clique, and you had like Danny Lasowski and his guy. There's always different guys that kind of latch on to different guys, that are above them as far as who you're learning off of and who they look up to. So there's, and it was always kind of, the elitic camp against the other guys. So,
yeah,
Willie Kane or Justin Adams or anybody that's been around Karl like that. And Jamie knows exactly what I'm talking about. You're there to whip their ass, and that kind of gets, you kind of get that from Karl, and that gets to be part of your mindset,
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that one. So Dave wants to know that he says Rick was a significant sign painter before becoming a world-famous crew chief. And I wonder if you could name some of the drivers' cars that you lettered. And I didn't know this. Obviously, you had a pretty good hand in the art world.
Yeah, back then, this is a long time ago. Back then I helped on Larry Jackson's stuff when my dad used to do it. Johnny Murphy's, a lot of the guys at Silver Springs. We used to do a couple late models back then. Joey Coon's sprint car. I got to do the Weicker cars a couple times when Donnie Eisenhower was there, working for Mr. Weicker. And I'm trying to think of some other ones. There's been so many over the years. A lot of guys come in town. They'd bring, Karl and them would come in. I've done a car for Mark before. Just, they'd come in town and they're like, hey, can you come down here? We need to let our tail tanker. I did a wing for Bobby Allen at the Knoxville Nationals in the hotel room. Just,
so it's just,
this is back when a lot of stuff.
Yeah, back when cars were actually painted and not vinyl wrapped. Yep.
Back then, a lot of hand painting and airbrushing and stuff like that. So
yeah. So who paints the house when you guys got to paint? I'm sure that's you also then.
Yeah, unless I'm not home, then we get somebody. But usually I'm in charge of the painting.
Yeah, especially cutting in the walls versus the roof.
Yeah.
All right, last question that I have here for you is when just wanted to confirm a rumor. When you were racing the 2.7 micros, when you were did you ever go to the track and forget to bolt the motor in?
Yes. Yeah. So I left it on the bench at Gobrecht's shop.
Oh, what do you mean you left it on the bench? You forgot the whole motor?
Yeah. We rebuilt them. I think we were going, Path Valley used to run on Friday nights and Hill Valley run on Saturday nights. So we, stuck pistons in that Saturday morning and you're helping, I'd forget what I was doing. Brian Gobrecht probably laughing if he'd heard it. But we got there and I rolled my car out of the trailer and the motor wasn't on it. So it was back at the shop on the bench. But we got everybody else's motors on and got them running. So
so do you remember, did you race that night or did you have to just sit back and watch everybody else?
Kevin actually loaned me one of his to run that night. Either him or Brian, I forget which one, but one of them loaned me a motor to run that night.
Well, that's good stuff, Rick. It's been just a little bit over an hour. I appreciate you dropping in with me tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and I know it was a lot of extra work for you to take the time out to do this, but just thanks again for coming on tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Okay, gang, with that's going to be a wrap for this week. Appreciate Rick one more time. I know I've said it a lot this time, but it's great having great hosts on here. Thank everybody for tuning in again this week. If you get a chance, get that like button out there, get that subscribe button out there, get that share button out there for me. That's going to help me go a long ways too as this thing continues to grow. So that's what I'm really hoping for. I am going to be heading out to Las Vegas for the high limit stuff this week. Going to follow some stuff over into California. Going to be helping out a guy out there. We'll probably let you know who that is going to be with later on here. I'm probably going to have him on the show with me. So follow along with me on my Facebook page here. I'm going to try to do some live stuff while I'm out there too. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great week, and we will see you at the racetrack somewhere.